Let's take a look, Gemini. Are there any Gemini sisters here? I feel like in general, things move much slower than usual, but I also think that if you go too slow, it gets too drawn out. And a lot of students end up forgetting what they learned earlier by the time they get to the later parts. Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, all in Gemini. Oh my God, that's full Gemini. Let me check again. There are so many. Moon in Gemini, Sun in Gemini, Venus in Gemini. It's all involved, so it feels much easier to understand, right? Yes, Sun and Mercury in Gemini. There are so many Gemini sisters in this astrology class, so you all should be pretty quick learners. Mercury and Jupiter are okay, but Mercury in Gemini is also great. Let's talk about Gemini. First of all, Gemini is an air sign, and it's also mutable. So what kind of traits do you think you'll see when an air sign is mutable? Air is inherently free, always changing, always blowing, right? So this is change on top of change. That's why Gemini has this quality of extreme instability, and it corresponds to the third house of the zodiac. It's lively and restless, just drifting along with the wind, fluttering and flitting about. Right, and it corresponds to the third house. Make a note of that. Its ruling planet doesn't even know what it's thinking itself because its thoughts change so quickly. The ruling planet is Mercury. Remember that too. We'll talk about Mercury later, the little flying sprite. So what is Mercury associated with? It's related to our intelligence and our thinking, among other things. That's why you'll find Geminis are very articulate. Their quick tongues are thanks to Mercury being their ruling planet. Think about the Magician card in tarot, which is also linked to Gemini, right? It actually corresponds to Mercury. Its polarity is masculine. As we've mentioned, all air signs have masculine energy. Am I going too fast when I explain it like this? I just realized I should check in with you. Do you feel like it's too fast? Feel free to give feedback. No, it's not too fast. Okay, if it does get too fast, I have a singing bowl here with me, and I can play it for you so everyone can take a break. The pace of this class is a bit faster than Tarot and Lee, and also faster than the first class. Now, as for the body part it corresponds to, it's mainly related to our limbs. Limbs and arms. Why is Gemini associated with siblings? Because of the phrase hands and feet, which refers to brothers and sisters. All right, then I'll just follow this pace. If anyone feels I'm going too fast, let me know. So, hands and limbs, and fundamentally, it's related to the respiratory and nervous systems. Why is that? The respiratory system is actually a part below the neck, right? And the respiratory system is a kind of passageway. It transmits. It's about breathing. Gemini, Mercury, and Pisces all have the characteristic of being channels or conduits. And then it's related to the nervous system, the brain, thinking. Air signs are all connected to thought, the nervous system. That's why people with a strong air element tend to have nervous tension and often overthink, because the water element is also related to things like nerves, thinking, and learning. So Gemini is directly related to the nervous system, and Virgo, which comes later, is also connected to it. Yes, trouble sleeping. And then the sign opposite Gemini is Sagittarius. Gemini's opposite sign is Sagittarius, which is the ninth house and the third house. They correspond to the ninth house. So the characteristics between them are that Gemini governs elementary education. What kind of elementary education? Let's use our astrology course as an example. Ella. The course we're taking right now is actually the Gemini part. It's about getting started, getting hands-on, and getting a general understanding of what astrology is, right? Then L2 and L3 correspond to higher education, which means they go deeper, more in-depth, and more comprehensive in chart interpretation, understanding astrology, and so on. So Gemini corresponds to the third house and elementary education. That's why you'll find that Geminis are very good at learning things quickly. They pick things up fast, but they don't necessarily master them deeply. This is because Gemini is inherently connected to elementary education and basic knowledge. But if you talk to them about more theoretical or cross-disciplinary things, they learn simple, basic things extremely quickly. And as for colors, Gemini corresponds to all kinds of color styles. Gemini doesn't have a specific or unique color. Are there any sisters here with Venus and Gemini? Think about your own clothing style. It's completely unpredictable. Or if you have a strong Gemini influence, you might find that you like dark styles too. They also like flashy, flamboyant styles. Yes, that's right. And they also like niche styles. If something new comes along, they can accept it too. They can handle any style. Yes, that's right. So they correspond to all kinds of colors and all kinds of styles. That's Gemini. Do those with Gemini or Venus in Gemini feel this way? In other words, you don't have a single requirement for style, which also means you don't really have a style, right? The other day, I was reading a book, or maybe listening to someone talk, yes. I think there's a saying that's really true. Someone asked a question, maybe it was during a live stream. The person asked, "What should I do? I don't know what I want to do next." And the host said something that really struck me. He said, "If you don't know what to say, if you don't know what to do, it means you can do anything." It's actually the same principle, right? If you don't know what to do, you're like a blank canvas, and whatever you paint on a blank canvas, it becomes a pattern. So for Geminis, when it comes to listening to music, any style is fine. That's just how Geminis are. Gemini is a sign that doesn't judge. This way is fine, that way is fine. So they're very, very receptive to information, but it also means they're easily swayed, like a fence sitter. And they don't have overly high moral standards. Because for them, everything is acceptable. They can accept anything. What does it mean they can accept everything? It means they can swing both ways. Like a fence sitter, the developmental stage for Gemini is from 5 to 9 years old, basically the age when kids start elementary school. So every child goes through a Gemini phase at this age. Kids at this stage can understand what adults say, they're easily influenced, and they can pick up bad habits just as easily. For example, if a dad spends every day lounging around playing video games, the child will quickly learn to play video games too. And if the mom swears every day, the child will start swearing too. This is the stage when they learn language the fastest, but it's also when they're most easily influenced or led astray by those around them. So Gemini's developmental stage is from 5 to 9 years old. With this in mind, observe the 5 to 9-year-old children around you or think back to when you were at that age, and you'll find it much easier to understand Gemini. And why do so many parents start enrolling their children in all kinds of extracurricular classes between the ages of 5 and 9, trying to develop their talents? It's because at this stage, children's ability to express themselves and their learning capacity are at their peak, and it's also when they start learning languages. This is when they can build a foundation, and overall, their main characteristics are being lively, changeable, and unstable. All right, now let's take a look. I wrote here that just like their symbol, if you look at the symbol for Gemini, both the horizontal and vertical lines are 2s. Basically, here comes my soul drawing skills again. It looks like this, right? Up, down, left, right, both the horizontal and vertical are 2s. So just like their symbol, Geminis have duality. That's their strength. The downside is, well, up, down, left, right, they can take both sides of anything, and that's why. And as we've mentioned, mutable energy spreads and rises in a spiral, right? What does it mean to be spiral? It means circling with a bit of anxiety, always spinning, always turning. It just keeps spinning and spinning. So the characteristic of Gemini is that they're always running around, darting back and forth, and it really feels like they're all over the place, touching a bit of everything on both sides. If you observe people with strong Gemini traits, have you noticed it's really hard for them to do just one thing at a time? If you ask them to do only one thing during class, it just doesn't work. Many people with strong Gemini traits will be scrolling through Xiaohongshu during class, drinking milk tea at the same time, and taking notes as well. Their attention is scattered. They're always expanding, constantly putting down their phone, circling around, doing a bit of this and a bit of that, but they just can't focus. It feels like running around all over the place, right? Okay, and as for people, it's related to siblings, brothers and sisters, right? And Gemini is also about twins and so on, so it's connected to our symbiotic relationships and to siblings, insects, twins, and also to journalists. Think about what a journalist is. They run around gathering news and spreading information. They take what they hear and see, process it, and then spread it outwards. Like that's the kind of thing it is. But this kind of journalist is actually just a conduit, just someone who transmits information. They're not the type who writes books or a university professor spreading ideas. This kind of journalist is simply passing on news. Why is it related to thieves? Because they steal things with their hands, and Gemini is associated with hands. Another reason is that their sense of morality tends to be lower. We'll talk about surnames in a bit, and they're very clever. Also, lawyers. Of course, this type of lawyer isn't the more advanced kind. Those are associated with Jupiter. So the type of lawyer associated with Gemini is the one who defends clients, basically turning black into white, or their profession relies on making money by talking. That's why Gemini has the meaning of a lawyer. All right, and their belongings are related to electronic devices, vehicles, and communication tools. So you'll notice that when Mercury is in retrograde, people immediately mention lawyers, but actually it's not quite the same type. Spokespersons, in short, their job is to speak on behalf of others. Understand? All right, so as we mentioned, some students in the group said that Mercury will go retrograde in August, right? Mercury retrograde, it just means Mercury is in retrograde. Mercury, right? Mercury rules Gemini, and Mercury itself is also related to electronic devices, transportation, and communication. That's why during Mercury retrograde, things like flight delays, phone malfunctions, or unsaved files happen so often. It's because of this. And during Mercury retrograde, Gemini and Virgo will feel it especially strongly. Every time Mercury goes retrograde, Gemini and Virgo will suffer a bit because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. And their behavioral patterns are very changeable, multitasking, and constantly shifting. They can do things this way or that way. They're also very quick and jumpy in their actions. Geminis are also very jumpy in the way they speak. They're also very jumpy when it comes to relationships. They're the type to break up and then quickly move on to the next one. If you observe the Geminis around you, you'll notice that the people they date, especially their later partners, are all completely different from each other. They can date anyone. They don't have a specific type they like. There's an inherent instability. They're quick and agile, very smart. Geminis are very intelligent, adaptable, and also associated with short trips. So Geminis don't like making long-term plans, but if you suggest a spontaneous trip or want to visit them, they're totally up for it. All right, now we've come to this part. Actually, we've already talked a lot about it. Mutable air signs, as we just mentioned, are characterized by rapid and unstable spirals of rising and falling. So it's an energy that can't be contained. It's an energy that can't be held back, that can't be grasped. The biggest trait of Gemini is that you just can't pin them down. And what does it mean to be ungraspable? It means they're constantly changing. For Gemini, the only constant in their career is perpetual change. They're always changing. So whether it's all their decisions or why people say Geminis are fickle, it's because of this. They can't be pinned down and they can't stay in one place. They're always circling, always drifting in the wind, always swirling around. So they're extremely changeable. But this changeability actually has two meanings. One is the change as in movement. What's the other kind of change? It's debate as in argument. Why do they like to talk so much? Always chattering away. It's because they're ruled by Mercury and they're constantly thinking. So that's also why Geminis love to gossip. It's because they're ruled by Mercury. The stage they're in naturally leads them to learn to speak and communicate. The ages of 5 to 9 are all about building communication with the world and forming basic concepts. What were we learning from 5 to 9 years old? Do you remember? In elementary school, 5 to 9 is when we just started first grade. By the time we reach 5th or 6th grade, what are we actually learning? It's things like pinyin and the 26 letters of the alphabet, right? We're learning the foundations of our language and expression, the most fundamental things. It's just like how before learning a new chart, we need to learn the basics first. Just like with zodiac signs, planets, and houses, we have to learn the most basic things, these pinyin letters, before we eventually move on to natal charts and then to comprehensive interpretations. Gemini is actually related to these fundamental aspects of communication and basic concepts. So they're very well suited, right? Suited to being teachers in high school or below. Elementary education is about learning basics. People with strong Gemini placements, especially women, pick up foundational or introductory things quickly. But it's not about laying groundwork. Laying foundation is earth element. For example, when you learn 26 letters, which level are you at? Is foundation just knowing 26 letters? Or is it about writing 26 letters beautifully? It's not about laying foundation. It's already at stage of learning concepts, moving to deeper things. They're simply learning. At this stage, you need to recognize these 26 letters. It's about recognizing characters. It's initial stage of learning concepts and logic, knowing there are 26 letters in English. In Chinese, we use pinyin, and Chinese characters are made of horizontal, vertical, left falling, and right falling strokes. They're just learning up to this stage. Do you understand? What is higher education for Sagittarius? Once you've learned this, the characters, the pinyin, and then you can form words and make sentences. When it comes to higher education, you use them to write books. You use them to write articles, to write classical Chinese prose. This is the realm of higher education. Let's try to understand it this way, okay? Or let's say elementary education is often related to knowledge from high school and below. Then when it comes to Sagittarius, it's like university, right? And then studying abroad, going overseas to study, and then expressing and spreading your ideas, your advanced thoughts. This is the advanced education, higher education of Sagittarius. It's related to spreading ideas. But when it comes to the Gemini period, it's more about transmitting information. It hasn't yet reached the stage of forming ideas. That's right. Got it? And then it's a sign that's full of curiosity. Gemini is extremely, extremely curious, always exploring. Everyone, it's a sign that's curious about the world. And it doesn't judge, it doesn't evaluate. What does that mean? We say that air signs tend to be judgmental, but Gemini doesn't have that kind of judgment. I can understand the black, and I also listen to the white. I listen to both sides, black and white. Gemini doesn't judge either side. It's more like the messenger in the middle, like, hey, let me tell you what so-and-so said. And after listening to this side, hey, let me tell you what so-and-so said. It's very much like a communicator or a messenger, but actually they're easily swayed because they don't have a strong sense of right and wrong or a strong feeling of being judgmental. And they love gossip. They love to express themselves. Think about every Gemini. I joked today that every Gemini has a lot of gossip groups. Wherever they are, they have places to chat about gossip and love to share. And then, why is there no emotion here? Because Gemini is an air sign. Really, Gemini is an air sign. And air signs have no emotion. Wind has no emotion, remember? The air element, as we say, brings a sense of detachment and indifference. It has no emotion, it doesn't take root, and it doesn't have a standard for judging good or bad. So overall, Gemini is a sign without a sense of morality. But this isn't an insult. It's just that they don't have a strong feeling of, if I do this, it will go against my conscience, and so on. They don't have a strong sense of morality. This is also why so many people say that Gemini men are the worst. It's because their sense of morality is relatively weak. Essentially, they are not easily affected by things themselves. Can you add me to a gossip group so I can listen to some gossip? Let me put it this way. Wherever Gemini girls go, they can form a gossip group. There are always lots of Gemini girls in the group discussing gossip. Fellow Geminis. Isn't that how it feels? Wherever they go, they can turn any group into a gossip group. Yes, you just need to be in the same group as a Gemini. There's no need to create a separate group. All right, then just listen to what they say. Yeah, for Geminis talking about gossip, what's fun about it? All right, have I ever told you that looking at a cat's zodiac sign is really accurate? If you check a cat's sun sign, it's spot on. Wherever I go, there's always a gossip hall. And our cat at home is a Gemini male. He talks a lot, really nonstop, and he's super active. If you look at your cat's sun sign, you'll understand that's just the cat's personality. Like a tabby cat, haha.